The first lie Caleb Brooks ever told about me was that I was his boyfriend, and the terrifying part was how easily everyone believed him. I was standing behind a photo booth at a summer wedding in Cape Cod, trying to fix a jammed printer with one hand while balancing a paper cup of lemonade in the other, when Caleb grabbed my wrist like the world was ending. He looked ridiculous in the best possible way. Navy suit slightly wrinkled, tie loosened, sandy blonde hair refusing to stay where the barber had put it, blue eyes wide with a kind of panic I had only seen once before, when he thought he had lost my grandmother's antique teapot during a move. Across the lawn, under strings of warm white lights, guests laughed, champagne glasses clinked, and the Atlantic wind carried the smell of salt, roses, and buttercream frosting. It should have been a perfect July evening. Instead, Caleb whispered, "Ethan, I did something stupid." That was how most of our adventure started. We had been best friends for 6 years, ever since he walked into the community art center where I taught Saturday sketch classes and asked if stick figures counted as emotional expression. I was 21 then, shy, broke, and convinced love was something that happened to louder, braver people. Caleb was all sunshine and easy confidence, a former college basketball player with a smile that made strangers trust him with their dogs, their secrets, and occasionally their car keys. He was also straight, or at least that was the word he had always used, so I built a quiet little fence around my heart and called it friendship. "Vanessa is here," he said, glancing over his shoulder. I followed his gaze and saw her near the hydrangeas, elegant in a green dress, laughing with Caleb's mother as if she had never broken his heart, moved to Chicago, and returned with perfect timing. "She told my mom we're getting back together," Caleb said. "And when Mom asked me if it was true, I said no. That sounds unusually healthy. Then she asked if I was seeing someone else." My stomach dropped before he even finished. Caleb swallowed. I said yes. "Caleb." And then she asked who. The printer clicked back to life, spitting out a strip of photos no one was waiting for. "Please tell me you invented a dentist from Denver." He gave me a helpless look. I said you. Before I could breathe, Vanessa turned toward us, Margaret Brooks beside her, smiling with delighted curiosity. Caleb's hand slid into mine, warm and trembling. Then he lifted our joined fingers and said, bright enough for half the wedding to hear, "Mom, you already know Ethan, but I guess you don't know he's my boyfriend." Margaret Brooks blinked once, then twice, and for one impossible second I thought she was going to see straight through us, through Caleb's bright smile, through my frozen expression, through the fact that the only thing holding me upright was pure social panic. Then her face softened in a way that made my chest ache. "Well," she said, pressing one hand to her heart, "that explains why you two always look like you are in your own little world." Vanessa's smile tightened just enough for me to notice. Caleb squeezed my hand, not theatrically, not for show, but like he was asking me not to let go. I should have pulled away. I should have laughed, corrected him, saved us both before the lie grew legs, and started walking around the wedding reception introducing itself to relatives. Instead, I heard myself say, "Surprise." It came out weak, but Margaret made a delighted sound and hugged me so quickly I nearly dropped the photo strips. She smelled like vanilla perfume and expensive hairspray. "Ethan, honey, I always hoped Caleb would find someone kind. Kind. Not handsome, not impressive, not successful. Kind." The word landed somewhere tender. Caleb looked at me, and for a breath, the noise of the wedding blurred behind him. After Margaret left to tell Caleb's father, I dragged him behind the white catering tent, past stacked folding chairs and buckets of melting ice. "Have you completely lost your mind?" I whispered. "Possibly," Caleb said. But in my defense, it was a high-pressure situation. A high-pressure situation is parallel parking in Boston. This is emotional fraud. He winced. "I know. I am sorry." I panicked. "You told your mother we are dating." "I know. Your mother, who sends Christmas cards to people she met once at airport security." "I know. By tomorrow morning, half of New England will think I am your boyfriend." Caleb looked down at his shoes, suddenly less like the golden boy everyone leaned on and more like a tired man who had run out of places to hide. "Can you help me get through tonight? Just tonight. I will fix it after." I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect the small, foolish part of me that had loved him quietly for years. But then he looked up and said, "You are the only person who makes me feel safe when everything gets too loud." That was unfair. That was Caleb, So I took a breath, straightened his crooked tie, and said, "Fine, but we need rules." The rules lasted exactly 12 minutes, which was still 11 minutes longer than I expected. Rule 1. No surprise hand-holding unless an actual relative was watching. Rule 2. No dramatic backstory about how we got together, because Caleb's imagination under pressure was a public safety concern. Rule 3. Absolutely no affectionate nicknames. Caleb immediately broke Rule 3 by calling me E in front of his Aunt Linda, who clutched her pearls and said it was adorable. By the time the cake was cut, our fake relationship had acquired a timeline, a fan base, and 3 separate requests for double dates. Caleb kept apologizing with his eyes every time someone asked how long we had been together, and I kept answering with the calm confidence of a man whose heart was quietly packing a suitcase and leaving town without him. About 3 months, I told one cousin, because it sounded believable. 6, Caleb said at the exact same time. The cousin stared. I smiled. 3 officially. 6 emotionally. Caleb coughed into his lemonade. That should have been the worst of it. But then Margaret appeared with the kind of smile mothers use when they have already planned 5 steps ahead. "You are still coming to the lake house next weekend, right?" she asked. Caleb went still beside me. "Mom, I do not think Ethan can." "Of course he can," she said warmly. "Labor Day weekend is family tradition. 3 days in Vermont, no excuses. Besides, your father has been wanting to meet him properly." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Caleb looked at me like a man watching a canoe drift away with his wallet inside. Vanessa, standing just close enough to enjoy the disaster, lifted her glass. "That sounds wonderful. Ethan should definitely go." And there it was, the trap wrapped in maple-scented hospitality. Later, while the band played old Motown and fireflies blinked over the lawn, Caleb and I sat on the back steps of the venue, shoulder to shoulder, but carefully not touching. "You can say no," he said quietly. "I know," I answered. "I really mean it. I know." He looked out toward the dark water beyond the dunes. "I just hate that she still makes me feel like I have to prove I am fine." His voice had lost its sparkle. I saw the boy underneath, the one who smiled before anyone could ask if he was hurting. So I leaned back on my hands, watched the stars appear one by one, and said, "Then next weekend, we prove nothing. We just survive your family's pancakes." By the next Friday afternoon, Caleb's old silver Jeep was packed with weekend bags, grocery store snacks, and a level of nervous energy that could have powered a small airport. We drove north from Boston with the windows cracked open, letting in the smell of pine and warm asphalt, while Caleb kept one hand on the wheel and the other hovering near the radio, like choosing the wrong song might ruin our entire plan. "We need to review the details," he said. "We met 6 years ago at the Community Arts Center. We started dating 3 months ago officially, 6 emotionally, which I still think was weirdly brilliant. And our first date was," he glanced at me. "Coffee," I said. "Coffee is too basic." "Fine. Coffee and a walk through the public garden." "Did we hold hands?" "Caleb, right?" "Too much." He nodded seriously, then ruined it by asking, "Did I buy you a muffin?" I stared out the window to hide my smile. "You always buy me a muffin." Something soft passed over his face, quick and unguarded. "Yeah, I do." The lake house appeared just before sunset, tucked between tall maple trees at the end of a gravel road, with green shutters, a wide porch, and a dock stretching into water. Bright as polished glass. It looked like every family memory Caleb had ever described had been built out of cedarwood and golden light. Margaret was waiting on the porch before the Jeep even stopped. She hugged Caleb first, then me, like I had been expected there for years. Henry Brooks stood behind her with a mug of coffee, broad-shouldered, quiet, his gray hair ruffled by the breeze. He shook my hand and said, "Good to finally meet the person who keeps my son from living on protein bars." "I do my best, sir. Call me Henry." Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner, old books, and something baking with blueberries. Family photos lined the hallway. Caleb missing front teeth, Caleb in a basketball jersey, Caleb at graduation with his arm thrown around me, both of us sunburned and laughing. I had seen that photo before, but here, in his family home, it felt different. It felt claimed. Then Margaret opened the guest room door and said, "I hope you boys do not mind sharing. We are full this weekend." Caleb and I looked at the single queen bed, then at each other. Behind us, his younger sister Olivia leaned against the wall, grinning like she had just been handed the best television show of the season. "Relax," she said. "You two are terrible liars, but weirdly adorable ones." Caleb volunteered to sleep on the floor like he was accepting a noble quest, but Margaret shut that down before he could even unfold the spare blanket. "Do not be ridiculous," she called from the hallway. "That bed has survived 20 years of family visits. It can survive 2 grown men who supposedly like each other." Olivia laughed so hard she nearly dropped the towels. I should have been mortified, but the room was too warm, too golden, too full of the scent of cedar walls and fresh laundry for panic to fully take hold. Caleb stood by the bed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I can build a pillow wall," he offered. "With what? Your anxiety?" I asked. He looked relieved when I joked, and that made something inside me loosen. Dinner was served on the porch as the lake turned pink under the sunset. Henry grilled corn and salmon. Margaret told stories about Caleb trying to run away to join a minor league baseball team when he was 8, even though he had never played baseball. Caleb groaned into his lemonade while I laughed harder than I meant to. For once, I was not watching his life from the outside. I was sitting inside it, passing napkins, stealing roasted potatoes from his plate, being asked whether I preferred blueberry pancakes or waffles in the morning. After dinner, Caleb and I were sent to the dock with a bowl of strawberries and strict instructions to enjoy the view like young people do. The lake was quiet except for crickets and the soft knock of water against the posts. Caleb stretched out beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. "You are good at this," he said. "Lying to your family. Making them happy." I picked at the green top of a strawberry. "That is not always the same thing." He went quiet. Across the water, porch lights blinked on one by one. "I know," he said finally. "I think that is what scares me." Before I could answer, a mosquito landed on his forehead, and I slapped it away without thinking. He stared at me, betrayed. "Did you just hit me? I saved you. You attacked me with affection." We laughed too loudly, the kind of laughter that folds 2 people closer without asking permission. Then his smile softened, and for one small, dangerous second, Caleb looked at me like he had forgotten we were pretending. I looked away first, because I remembered too well. The first night in the lake house should have been impossible to survive, but somehow, it became strangely ordinary. Caleb built his ridiculous pillow wall anyway, then knocked half of it onto the floor while trying to plug in his phone charger. I laughed into my sleeve, and he whispered, "Do not encourage the architecture. It is underfunded." We lay on opposite sides of the bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned lazily above us, both pretending the distance of 12 inches was not louder than thunder. Outside, the lake moved softly in the dark. Somewhere downstairs, Henry closed a cabinet. Margaret murmured something about breakfast, and the house settled around us like a living thing. "Ethan," Caleb said after a long silence. "Thank you. For today." "You already thanked me." "Not properly." I turned my head. His face was half lit by moonlight. The confident lines of him softened into something younger, almost uncertain. "I know this is weird. Caleb, your sister caught us rehearsing how to look natural while passing each other a salt shaker. Weird left hours ago." He smiled, but it faded quickly. "I just mean, I know I ask too much of you sometimes." That landed closer than I wanted it to. I thought of every late-night phone call, every emergency ride, every breakup conversation where I held him together and then went home alone to take myself apart. "You do," I said gently. His eyes moved to mine. I had expected him to joke, but he did not. "I am sorry." The words were simple. No performance, no grin, no escape hatch. Just Caleb, in the dark, telling the truth. In the morning, the house burst awake with pancakes, coffee, and Olivia arguing that blueberries were superior to chocolate chips with the passion of a courtroom attorney. Caleb moved beside me in the kitchen with easy rhythm, handing me a mug before I asked, reaching over my shoulder for plates, brushing flour from my sleeve after Margaret recruited us to help with batter. It all felt too domestic, too possible. Later, as I sat on the porch sketching the dock, Caleb came outside with 2 muffins wrapped in napkins. "You forgot to eat." I looked at the blueberry muffin in his hand and felt my heart do something foolish. "You remembered." He sat beside me, shoulder warm against mine. I always do. By late Saturday morning, the lake house had become a world with its own gentle gravity. Shoes gathered by the door in mismatched piles. Coffee cups appeared and disappeared from every flat surface. and someone was always laughing from a room just out of sight. I should have felt like a guest, but Margaret kept asking where I preferred the extra towels. Henry handed me a fishing hat like I had earned family equipment, and Olivia had already decided I was the only person in the house with taste because I agreed that her brother dressed like a youth pastor on vacation. Caleb took the insult with wounded dignity, then changed shirts 10 minutes later. We spent the afternoon at the small town market, walking past stalls of maple candy, handmade soap, used paperbacks, and peaches stacked in wooden crates. Caleb bought kettle corn, spilled half of it on himself, and tried to convince a 5-year-old that he had done it on purpose for comedy. I sketched the old clock tower while he stood beside me, quieter than usual, watching the pencil move across the page. "That is how you see things?" he asked. "Not exactly." "How then?" I looked at the half-finished drawing, at the crooked charm of the rooftops, the woman selling flowers, the blur of Caleb's shoulder at the edge of the frame, because somehow he always ended up there. "I guess I draw what feels worth remembering." He did not answer right away. When I glanced up, his expression had gone soft in a way that made the busy market seem to fall back a few feet. Then Olivia appeared with 2 lemonades and ruined the moment by saying, "Please do not stare at each other like that near the jam booth. People are trying to shop." Caleb turned red. I laughed because it was safer than doing anything else. That evening, the town hosted a summer festival near the water, with food trucks, a small bluegrass band, and strings of lights swaying above picnic tables. Vanessa arrived just as the sun dipped behind the trees, elegant and smiling like she had been invited by the weather. She hugged Margaret, complimented Henry's old truck, and looked at me with polished sweetness. "Ethan, right? It is brave of you to come into a family weekend so quickly." Caleb's hand found the small of my back, steady but careful. "He belongs here," he said. The words were simple. The problem was, for one bright, impossible second, I believed him. The festival should have been easy to enjoy, but Vanessa had a way of turning ordinary air into a test. She walked beside us past the food trucks and craft booths, asking questions that sounded friendly until they landed. When did we realize our friendship had become something more? Who said it first? Was Caleb surprised? Did his parents know before the wedding? Each question tightened the invisible thread around my ribs. Caleb answered what he could, stumbling only once when he said our first official date was in April, and I said May at the same time. Vanessa smiled as if she had found a loose board. "That is funny," she said. "People usually remember the beginning of something real." I felt Caleb go still beside me. Before he could speak, I forced a laugh. "We remember the important parts." "Do you?" she asked softly, looking only at me. The band started a slow song near the dock, and couples drifted toward the open space under the lights. Margaret waved us over with both hands, delighted. "Dance, you two." I nearly refused, but Caleb was already looking at me with an apology in his eyes. So I let him lead me beneath the strings of yellow bulbs, where the lake reflected every light like a second sky. His hand settled carefully at my waist, respectful and uncertain. Mine rested on his shoulder. We moved badly at first, too aware of every inch between us, until Caleb whispered, "I am sorry. I should have protected you from that." "You do not have to protect me from awkward questions. I do if I am the reason you are being asked." His thumb brushed once against the back of my hand, so small no one else could have noticed. For what it is worth, I remember the beginning. My breath caught. "Caleb, it was raining outside the art center. You were wearing that gray sweater with paint on the sleeve. I asked if stick figures counted as emotional expression, and you looked at me like I was the dumbest person you had ever wanted to help." I laughed before I could stop myself, but my eyes stung. The song ended, and people clapped around us. We did not step apart. Then, near the Ferris wheel glowing at the edge of the festival, Vanessa watched from a distance, and Caleb leaned closer, not for her, not for anyone. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You were never just convenient to me, Ethan." For a moment, I forgot there were people around us. I forgot the music, the laughter, the smell of funnel cake and lake water. Even Vanessa standing near the lemonade stand with that careful little smile. All I could hear was Caleb breathing. All I could see was the fear and honesty fighting in his eyes. Then, "What am I?" I asked, and my voice came out much smaller than I wanted. Caleb looked down at our joined hands as if the answer might be written there. I do not know how to explain it yet. The words should have disappointed me, but they were not empty. They were clumsy, frightened, painfully real. But when I am with you, I stop performing, he said. I stop trying to be the version of myself everyone applauds. I just feel like me. The festival lights blurred at the edges. I wanted to believe him so badly it scared me. Caleb, I cannot be a place where you hide from Vanessa, or from your family, or from whatever question you are afraid to ask yourself. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know, and I cannot keep pretending if it is only pretending for you. The silence between us filled with music from the band, soft and sweet, a fiddle carrying the melody over the water. Caleb stepped closer, slow enough that I could have moved away. I did not. I do not want it to be only pretending, he whispered. I am not asking you to have all the answers, I said. I am asking you not to make me the experiment. His face changed then, not dramatically, not like a movie thunderstorm, but like a porch light finally coming on after a long evening. He understood. Maybe not everything, but enough. You deserve better than that, he said. Yes, I answered, even though my chest hurt. I do. He gave a small, broken laugh, proud and sad at the same time. You always were braver than me. I shook my head. No, I just got tired of being quiet. Across the grass, Margaret was watching us, not smiling now, just seeing. Henry stood beside her with his hands in his pockets. Olivia pretended not to look while looking completely. Caleb released my hand, and for one terrible second I thought he was letting go. Instead, he turned toward his family, toward Vanessa, toward the warm, curious crowd of the town that had known him since childhood, and said in a voice that trembled but did not break, I need a minute with Ethan. Not because anyone is watching, because he matters to me.